When I first stepped off the train in a small Tuscan village, I had no idea that what I was about to witness would completely change the way I thought about life, health, and aging. My name is Emily Carter, and I grew up in Ohio, where the average life expectancy barely scrapes past the mid-70s. My father passed away at 74, my uncle at 71, and even my grandmother, who was considered a strong woman, left us at 78. So when I began hearing about Italians regularly living past 100, I thought it was nothing more than a romanticized myth told to make Mediterranean countries sound like paradise. But as I spent time in Italy and began to uncover the secrets behind their long lives, I realized there were shocking truths hidden in plain sight, truths that could explain why so many Americans like my family never live long enough to see 90, let alone 100. It all started when I met a man named Giovanni in the little town of Grieve in Chianti. He was 102 years old, but walked with the energy of someone in his 60s. His eyes sparkled with mischief as he laughed, telling me about his daily routine, which included walking several miles through olive groves and sharing dinner with his family every single evening. I remember thinking, how is it possible for someone who has lived more than a century to look healthier than men half his age back in America? I told Giovanni that in the United States, many men don't make it past 75, and he looked at me with genuine surprise, as though he couldn't believe such a thing. The more I traveled across Italy, the more I realized Giovanni was not unique. In Sardinia, I met women in their 90s who still baked bread by hand, kneaded dough, and carried baskets of vegetables from their gardens. In Sicily, I watched grandfathers sip red wine under the shade of lemon trees, laughing with grandchildren until midnight. I even spoke with a 97-year-old woman named Rosa, who still rode her bicycle to the market. Their lives weren't perfect, but they carried a lightness that seemed to keep death at bay. It haunted me to think of my own grandmother, who spent her last years bedridden, surrounded by medical machines. Why was there such a drastic difference between the way Italians and Americans age? As I dug deeper, I realized the answers were complex, yet shockingly clear. I began to piece them together like a puzzle, and each piece revealed why Americans were aging faster, getting sicker earlier, and dying decades before Italians. The first revelation came when I sat down with an American doctor who had moved to Florence years earlier. His name was Dr. James Wilson, originally from Chicago, and he explained to me how the American diet was slowly killing people. In Italy, meals are made from scratch, filled with fresh vegetables, legumes, olive oil, fish, and just enough pasta and bread to satisfy. Portions are modest, and food is treated as a celebration, not something to devour quickly in the car on the way to work. Dr. Wilson told me that in America, processed foods, fast food chains, and sugar-heavy snacks dominate the daily diet. He pointed out that in the U.S., people grab frozen dinners, sodas, and salty chips without thinking, while Italians would never accept such compromises when it comes to their plates. He laughed softly when he said, "Emily, here food is medicine. In the States, food is poison." I thought back to my own life in Ohio, Friday nights with fast food takeout, rush lunches at my office desk, and the habit of drinking 2 cans of soda a day. My father, who died of heart disease at 74, had lived off fried chicken, bacon, and mashed potatoes. No one ever thought much about it, but suddenly I saw how what seemed normal to us was actually lethal. The second discovery came not from science, but from observing family life. Every evening in Italy, families gathered around the table. 3 generations ate together, laughed together, and talked for hours. Giovanni explained that he never once ate dinner alone, even after his wife passed away. His children and grandchildren came to his home almost every night, or he went to theirs. Loneliness, he said, was something Italians didn't allow. Contrast that with America, where my elderly neighbors often ate alone in front of the television, their children too busy to visit. My own grandmother spent her final years isolated, living in a nursing home with strangers instead of family. Research later confirmed what I saw. Loneliness can shorten life as much as smoking or obesity. In Italy, community is the heartbeat of longevity. The third shocking truth I uncovered had to do with stress. Americans live in a constant state of pressure. Work defines identity, and the hustle culture leaves little room for rest. In Italy, People certainly work hard, but they balance it with long lunches, afternoon rests, and evenings that stretch into laughter and song. I once joined a group of locals in Naples who sat on the beach drinking espresso until midnight, even though they all had work the next day. No one seemed anxious, no one rushed. They embraced the rhythm of life instead of fighting against it. I remembered my job in the US, where I worked 12-hour days under fluorescent lights, answering emails at midnight, and living with headaches, stomach pains, and constant fatigue. Stress had aged me before my time, while Italians seemed to stay young by refusing to let work consume them. The fourth truth came from something simple but powerful: movement. In America, we drive everywhere. I remember my uncle, who drove his car even to the mailbox. In Italy, everyone walks. They climb hills, ride bikes, and stroll through town squares every evening. Giovanni laughed when I asked if he ever went to a gym. "Why would I?" he said, lifting his basket of olives. "Life is my gym." The daily, natural movement keeps their heart strong, their joints flexible, and their bodies alive. My father, by contrast, sat on the couch most evenings watching television, his only exercise being the short walk from the fridge to his chair. It was no mystery why Giovanni lived past 100 while my father never reached 75. The final truth I discovered was perhaps the most beautiful. Italians carry joy in their daily lives. They celebrate small things: coffee in the morning, music in the street, festivals that bring the whole town together. Americans often chase happiness as a goal, buying bigger houses, newer cars, or waiting for retirement to finally enjoy life. But by the time retirement comes, their health is gone. Italians live joyfully in the present, and that joy keeps them alive. Rosa, the 97-year-old cyclist, told me something I'll never forget. "I never counted my years, only my moments." When I finally returned to the United States, I couldn't shake what I had seen. I looked around at my community in Ohio and saw the reality with new eyes. Obesity, isolation, stress, and depression were everywhere. Even young people looked tired and worn out. I realized that if Americans could learn from Italians, if we could change even a few habits, we could extend our lives and live with vitality instead of decline. I began changing my own life. I cooked real meals from fresh ingredients, sat down at the table every evening, walked instead of drove whenever possible, and forced myself to leave work at a reasonable hour. Slowly, I felt the difference. My headaches vanished, my energy grew, and I found joy in things I used to overlook. My friends,